Hi everyone, my name is Jen and this is Beast Has a Plants, where we talk things houseplant and home design. Welcome back. Guys, it's been cold here in Northern California, and not just like California standard of cold, it's been cold here. I lived on the East Coast for 4 years. I walked through snow to get to my classes. Like, it's been cold. So I thought this is a good time to start discussing what to expect during your first winter with plants. I will say that depending on where you live, the severity of your winters will be different, and therefore how much your plants are impacted will differ a little bit, but I tried to give relatively general advice that would be applicable to everyone. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, I've been seeing a lot of memes on Instagram, and I think the seasoned plant parents are scaring the first time winter plant parents a little bit too much. So when I first got into collecting plants, it was during the fall of last year, so I didn't know any different. I didn't know any better. I thought this was just like the normal growth rate for plants, and then spring rolled around and I was like, holy crap, I'm great at this. So yeah, okay, let's get into it. What to expect during your first winter. So for me personally, last year I didn't have any plants that went completely dormant, but the rate in which plants grow during the wintertime is going to be much, much slower than when the rate in which they grow during the active growing season, the spring and the summertime. Sometimes your plant leaf size can also decrease during the winter time. This is very, very common with shingling plants. I don't think that is as common with plants like philodendrons or plants that are climbing philodendrons or climbing up totem poles and things like that. However, I wouldn't expect the leaf size to increase a lot during the winter time. This year, I actually do have some plants that I am expecting to go completely dormant, but this is like normal and things that you should expect and prepare for. So things like oxalis. Oxalis you should actually deadhead right before like winter hits. So I actually will probably do it relatively soon, maybe in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to deadhead my entire oxalis and then dig up all of the tubers in the soil and then store it in like a Ziploc bag during the winter, and then I'm going to replant in the spring. I also have some caladiums outside that also needs to be pulled out of the ground and deadheaded to be stored. So I will do those eventually. So those are the only plants that I'm expecting to go like completely dormant because you're pulling them out of the ground. Everything else I'm going to assume will keep growing. Okay, so when people say that they have a lot of plants die during the winter time, I don't really think a lot of that is like during the actual like really, really bad parts of winter. I think the majority of plants, it's the transitional period between the warmer months and the colder months that's the hardest on them, and also the hardest on you to take care of the plants, because the needs of the plant starts changing quite rapidly and sometimes inconsistently depending on the weather, right? So for example, let's talk about watering. So when it's warm outside, obviously water is going to evaporate much, much quicker than when it is cold outside. So when it's cold, you need to water significantly less. For me, with this California temperature right now, where it's like one day it's like 80 and the next day it's like 50 and below, that's kind of hard to judge and hard to gauge with my plants. I've had more plants show symptoms of root rot the past 2 weeks than I have had in months, right? Like months. So it's really this transitional period where you have to adjust the way you take care of your plants, and the plants are also adjusting to its new environment. Okay, so that's one example of a tip, is to water significantly less during the winter time. As always, it is probably better to underwater than overwater. So yeah, when in doubt, leave it a couple more days. The second thing that I think is going to be the most important is temperature. If you live in the East Coast, especially if you live in an apartment building, take your plants away from your radiator. When I lived in New York, the building controlled the radiator. So one day you come home and the radiator is on, like just on, and that will cook your plants. So if your radiator is not on yet, take your plants off your radiator like now. My roommate had a plant that she put near our heating and it like died. So yeah, if you live in an apartment building in the East Coast, take your plants away from your radiator. The other thing is a lot of our house plants are tropical plants, so they are not cold hardy, which means that during the winter time, they still need to be maintained at a temperature like above 50 degrees ish. Because you know, it's not like, oh my god, it drops below 50 and they all die, but generally speaking, you do want to maintain them at a temperature above 50 degrees. If you live in a building where the windows is a little bit drafty, you also want to remove the plant from the windowsill and just pull it back a little bit, especially if your leaves have the tendency of touching the window, because it's going to be cold and the plant can develop cold burns. So pull it away from the windows. If you are having issues with keeping your temperatures, you know, high enough for the plant, I would recommend heat mats. So I don't want to show you my heat mat right now because I have a bunch of stuff on it, but I'll make sure to link it down in the description below. So heat mats are really, really cool. So technically they were made for seed germination to speed up the process of germinating seeds, but they are super, super useful for houseplants as well. Because I live in California where, you know, only the nighttime temperature drops below 50 in the winter time, like the daytime temperatures usually are above 50. I don't put heat mats under everything. I only use the heat mat for propagating plants. However, if you are having issues with keeping your plants warm enough, just get a bunch of heat mats and put them underneath like everything. The heat mat can raise your plant temperature between 10 to 20 degrees, which is like kind of a lot, like quite a big range. Like that's going from 30, which is like freezing, 32, which is freezing, to over 50, which is, you know, a good temperature. So I highly recommend heat mats. They are not that expensive. It's about like $15 for the size mat that I have, and I love it a lot. So yeah, so the next big environmental change is lighting. So obviously during the wintertime or the colder months, the days start getting shorter, so your plant has less light. I grow the majority of my collection with grow lights year round anyway, so I thankfully don't have to change too much. But if you are mainly using windows, you might want to purchase 1 or 2 additional grow lights to supplement. And so if you are just supplementing you know, light, then you only need to put them on maybe like 4 hours a day. However, if it's a car. However, if you are growing your plants kind of like me, where like they're not really getting any window light anymore, then they need to be on about 10 to 12 hours a day. I think most people do 12 on 12 off. You can also get automatic timers so that you don't really have to like worry too much about turning them on and turning them off. I really turn mine on a couple hours after I wake up, and then I turn mine off right before I go to bed. So they get between, I would say, 12 and 16 hours a day, more on like the 12-hour side than the 16, but between 12 and 16 hours a day. So I have 3 different kinds of grow lights. They are almost always linked in my description. If they are not linked in my description, then they are on my website. Oh, I don't know if I've talked about this on my channel. I have a website now. It's beeshouseplants.com. I have a tab called Plant Essentials. I have everything that I recommend listed. They are affiliate links, so if you click on the link and you purchase an item, the price of the item will not go up for you, but I do receive like a teeny commission off of that. So yeah, no pressure on using them. If you don't want to use my commission link and you just want to browse to see what I recommend and then, you know, not use them, that's fine too. Anyways, so I have 3 different grow lights that I have in my house. My favorite are the Sansi grow bulbs. I have the ones that are 25 watt, and those are my favorite. I think it is the perfect amount of brightness, and I have never had any issues with like burning or anything like that. I would obviously recommend with any light that you keep your plants around 12 inches away from the light. I do have some taller plants like the Syngonium right here that is a little bit taller, so it's more like 6 inches away from the Sansi grow light, and it hasn't experienced any burning at all. So I like that grow light quite a bit. I also have these lights. These are stripped T8 lights. I have the exact link for the ones I have down in the description below, and I like them. However, they are very strong, like very strong. My eyes have gotten used to like how bright they are, but they are so strong in fact that if your plant starts growing, you know, a little bit taller, they can burn your plants. So I've had a few plants now that they've just gotten too tall, and so they're too close to the light and I've gotten a little bit burned. So do keep that in mind before you purchase these. But yeah, so my favorite are the Sansi grow bulbs, and then these ones are second. And then I have another kind of strip light that I like, but I don't love the color of them. So yeah, okay. So lighting, and then I think the last main thing that we should talk about is humidity. So I assume for most places, but definitely for California, the humidity drops during the winter time, so it's more important now to, you know, have humidifiers if your humidity is very low. I genuinely do not think that humidity is the end all be all of plant care. Like, humidity will not solve all of your problems, but it is very helpful, and if you can, then humidifiers are great. I have the Voigt one. I do like it. I just don't like that it is a bottom fill humidifier. It's annoying, and it makes me lazy to want to refill it. I would have much preferred a top filling humidifier. However, I do like it a lot because you can set the the level of humidity you want. So let's say I want 70% humidity. I can set it to that, and so the humidifier only turns on when it senses a drop in humidity, and it pumps out, you know, air until it reaches 70 and then it stops. This way I don't have to refill my humidifier as often. So my humidifier, I refill, if I am good about it, once a week-ish, but honestly I'm not good about it, so it's more like once every other week. And not a lot during the summertime. So if for whatever reason you can't get a humidifier, don't want to get a humidifier, other ways you can raise your humidity is by grouping a lot of plants together to create a microclimate. However, you know, if you have a lot of plants grouped together, especially if they are touching, that does, you know, can increase the severity of a pest outbreak if you do end up getting a pest. So yeah, that will help. Also, you can do pebble trays. Pebble trays are actually quite effective. So how you would do a pebble tray is you would get like a plastic, you know, plastic drip tray. You can get them at Lowe's or Home Depot for like 30 cents each, or you can just use like a bowl or whatever, put some pebbles in it, and then fill up the water to below where the pebbles are, and then you put your plant on top of the drip tray. This way the planter is not touching the water, but there is water there that will evaporate and increase the humidity. I am not a fan of misting. I think that sometimes it can create more harm than good, but misting does increase the humidity around your plants for a temporary period of time. So I feel like misting is like a last resort thing, but you can absolutely mist as well. So yeah. Another thing that is important to do to prepare for winter is to do pest treatments. So, you know, pest prevention is so much easier than pest treatments. So I posted my recipe for my pest prevention spray on Instagram, but basically what it is that I buy concentrated neem oil. I measure that. Let me just look it up. Okay, so I have my ratio or my recipe for my pest preventative spray on my Instagram in the highlight bubble. So if you need to reference that later on, that's where it is. But basically, my mixture is neem oil based. I know it smells bad. My family complains when I use too much neem oil. I know it smells bad, but it is effective and it is natural. You should not spray pesticides or insecticides indoors. It's really, really harmful to spray those in like closed quarters. So those generally needs to be sprayed outside, and if it's cold outside, you can't bring your plants outside to do it. So neem oil based, I bought the spray bottle of neem oil one time, so I had a spray bottle, and then after that ran out, I just bought concentrated neem oil and started mixing my own mixture. So for the brand of neem oil I use, which is Bonide, you need half a tablespoon for every 32 fluent ounces, and that is just according to the instructions in the back. I also add a quarter of a teaspoon of rubbing alcohol, and it is 90% isopropyl alcohol, and I also do in a squirt of Dr. Bronner's Castile soap. If you don't have Castile soap, you can also use Dawn dish soap or any dish soap, but Dawn dish soap can be a little bit harsher on your plants than Castile soap, so if you have the option of Castile soap, do that. I just put it in a spray bottle, shake it up, and then I will spray that on all of my plants once a month after watering. So what I do is I will bring all of my plants into the bathroom in the tub. I will shower all of them. This is really good to, you know, knock off all the dust, but also like any pests that are on the leaves, helps knock them off. After that, I spray this mixture and then I just leave it on. I do not wipe it off. I will note that you should not use this mixture on anything that's velvety. So don't put it on your micans, don't put it on your Milanos, don't put it on your Splendid and Glorious and Gloriosums and things like that, because neem oil can ruin the texture of the plant. However, I put it on everything else. Monstera Tycon, Philodendron Pink Princess, everything else. Even my Calatheas, I also put this on my Calatheas. I haven't seen any issues with that, so yeah. Hi guys, sorry about that. My camera just died and I don't want to wait, so I'm going to just finish this video out on my phone. Okay, so I just want to quickly give my thoughts on fertilizer and wintertime, because I think my thoughts about that differ a little bit than what is normally taught or the advice that's normally given, which is you should not fertilize at all during wintertime, and I think it depends. So plants indoors really do not experience, you know, as big of an environmental change as they would in the wild, especially if you're there to, you know, do things like give it grow lights and increase its humidity, etc., etc. So more than not likely it is still going to grow during the wintertime. And if a plant is growing I want to fertilize it, especially because all of my plants, or 99% of my plants, are grown in a sterile medium. So my plants that are in soil is grown, the base of my soil is coco coir, which is a sterile medium, and otherwise my plant is in leca, which is also a sterile medium. So what I do during the winter time is that I no longer just fertilize on a schedule like I would maybe do in the spring and summer, where I'm like, oh, I'll just fertilize like once every other week. So now I kind of wait to see whether or not the plant is actively growing. So if a plant is actively growing, if it's currently putting out a new leaf, and it's about to unfurl, that's a good time to hit it with a teeny tiny bit of fertilizer. I do in the wintertime switch from synthetic fertilizer to organic, or not organic, but like natural fertilizer. So I no longer use like the Fox Farm stuff for my soil plants. I still will be using the Fox Farm stuff for my leca plants, but for my soil plants, I'm going to switch to fish emulsion, which does stink a little bit, but it doesn't last after you water your plants. The smell doesn't last. So, and then I would also dilute that to probably half strength of what is recommended on the back of the container. And when I see a leaf start to unfurl, the next watering that it gets, it's going to get that like fish emulsion mixture instead of just plain water. So not all the plants will get fertilizer consistently, but if it's currently trying to put out a new leaf, I will hit it with a little bit of fertilizer. So yeah, okay, so I hope that makes sense. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!